Hello everyone, I am Demented Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of the Brewery, I will be discussing my take on Princess Twilight Sparkle. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel. Other ways you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. Higher tier patrons get access to my Discord server as well as early access to scheduled videos on YouTube. You can find a link to that in the description as well. In fact, patrons got a chance to see this video earlier. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Princess Twilight Sparkle is a 2/2 alicorn with flying for 1 white and 1 blue. She has a Lord ability giving all your other alicorns, horses, pegasi, ponies, and unicorns +1/+1. This is great if you want to build a janky tribal deck using horses and unicorns. However, the deck I'm building is focused more on her activated ability. When you pay Wooburg, everybody wins the game. However, you need to control Applejack, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Rarity to do so. Of these, only Rarity exists on a card as of the recording of this video, but we'll discuss and tackle that obstacle later on in this episode. For the moment, this ability makes Princess Twilight Sparkle the only silver-bordered legendary creature with all 5 colors in its color identity. And that's the logic I used to brew this deck. In the spirit of the holidays, I took upon the challenge of building a deck using all of the Happy Holidays promos. These are promos given out as gifts during the holiday season to certain people over at Wizards of the Coast. There are currently 14 of these and the deck includes all of them. They don't synergize with each other, which was part of the challenge of brewing this deck. Also, in the spirit of the holidays, this will be a group hug deck. Since the deck is janky due to all the different things it's doing due to the challenge, I don't want to be taken out of the match before I'm able to do my thing. Thus, the group hug elements. They'll make opponents focus their efforts elsewhere while I'm slowly but surely building my convoluted engine to win me the game. So, they do have a function besides flavor. So let's look at these group hug cards and other effects to help us live long enough to take the win out from under our hapless opponent's feet. Rites of Flourishing and Galloping Brewery run you the risk of inadvertently king-making someone. However, they also benefit you too. Some wily opponents might want to destroy them if they're helping someone get too far ahead, but then again the person being benefited most might protect them, or you for controlling them. In any case, getting these out early enough in the game might have players leave you alone until they're ahead enough to consider them a problem. Hopefully by then you're also ahead enough. But these do speed the game along, so that's also good for multiplayer Commander games. Similar effects of these enchantments can be found on Kainaios and Tiro of Meletis. These rulers help everyone out at the table, but help you out more, even if it's just slightly. They're not easy to cast, but this deck doesn't have any issues with mana fixing, so it won't be a problem. That being said, they are 2/8 for 4 mana. This also makes them a deterrent against some attacks since they can just block and survive the attack. We also give the entire table access to draw with Font of Mythos, Howling Mine, and Temple Bell. At least with the bell we can choose when to have everyone draw, which is preferably at the end of the turn before ours to limit what our opponents would be able to play during our turn. The Font and Mine helps everyone else before us, but at least everyone benefits thanks to us, so it helps keep us off the radar for a while, especially in the early game. The deck also runs Feldegrift and its non-legendary version, Questing Feldegrift. These flying hippos gain a benefit in exchange for also benefiting an opponent. These are great political tools in multiplayer games. For example, you can pump Questing Feldegrift but give the hippo tokens to an opponent that's not the one you're planning to attack. Or you can give hippo tokens to an opponent who needs blockers in exchange for a future favor. So, more so than group hug cards, these are political cards in multiplayer games. You can also give an opponent a creature thanks to the first Happy Holidays promo, Fruitcake Elemental. Although a fruitcake, this 7/7 indestructible beater behaves more like a hot potato instead. The reason this is because at the end of its controller's turn, they receive 7 damage from it, and for 3 generic mana, you can give control away to another player. This is loads of fun in a multiplayer game, and as I just mentioned, it'll totally feel like you're playing hot potato. You can swing in with Fruitcake Elemental, then, during your post-combat main phase, you can pay 3 and pass it to someone else. That way you avoid the 7 damage at the beginning of your end step. That player can then swing with the elemental and do the same thing. Or you can equip it with something like Loxodon Warhammer to give it lifelink. That way, if you do keep it, the damage it deals to you during the end step is nullified because of the life gained. That and a 10/7 indestructible trampler with lifelink is way scarier than rock hard fruitcake. If you purchase the Ponies the Galloping promo set, then you probably also have Nightmare Moon. She's quite the beater since she's an 8/8 flyer if it's nighttime. However, she can be transformed against your will too, so be careful. For 6 generic mana, which anyone can pay for. If this is activated by other players, they become your friends when she transforms into Princess Luna. When this happens, you can wish for up to 6 cards with the moon in its art. Do keep in mind that this wouldn't normally work in Commander games because of Rule 13, even if playing with silver bordered cards. So you'll probably need to get an OK from your pod in order to use that ability. If cleared to do so, you can find cards that your opponents might use as well as yourself. There are plenty of cards to choose from, so really you can just keep a pile of them and have your friends choose which 6 to wish for. Just be sure not to wish for a Blood Moon, since this will screw over your lands. However, even with all this friendship and favors and group hugs, some opponents will just bah humbug and swing at you anyways. And this is where the second Happy Holidays promo of this episode becomes relevant: Snow Mercy. A play on No Mercy, the latter actually destroys a creature when it deals damage to you. However, Snow Mercy places a globe counter on a creature that deals combat damage to you. Then, you can tap, untap, tap, untap, tap Snow Mercy in order to tap down all creatures with globe counters on them. This might not protect you from losing outright to an Alpha Strike, but if an opponent hits you once, if you survive, then you'll be able to tap down their creatures. You can do this whether to prevent those creatures from attacking you again, or you can tap them down in order to leave them defenseless against someone else's attack to teach them a Ghost of Christmas future level lesson. Even then, if your opponents are still being naughty, set them back with an overloaded Cyclonic Rift. This is great against the horde coming your way. But it's also good to once more level the playing field if one opponent is taking more advantage of your group hub effects than the rest of the table is. Another way to avoid getting stared down by opponents is less subtle but just as effective. Keeping huge creatures on standby is the epitome of speaking softly but carrying a big stick. Besides Fruitcake Elemental, the deck's also running a quartet of fatties with tons of keyword abilities. Spirit of the Night is a 6/5 demon spirit for 9 mana that has flying, trample, haste, protection from black, and first strike when attacking. It definitely passes the vanilla test, to say the least. But the fact remains that it still costs 9 mana. Although we also take advantage of the previously mentioned group hug effects, this deck does ramp and has ways to generate lots of mana. That's just something I'm going to discuss later on. Sphinx of the Steel Wind is a 6/6 Sphinx artifact creature for 8 mana that has flying, first strike, vigilance, lifelink, protection from red, and protection from green. Similar to Spirit of the Night, it's great at what it does for its cost, but the fact remains that it still costs a lot. But again, we'll get into that later on. That being said, it's still a menacing presence on the board. Rounding the quartet are both Chromas. Both are 6/6 angels for 8 mana. The Fury version has flying, trample, protection from white, protection from blue, morph, fire breathing, and can't be countered. The Wrath version has flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, protection from black, and protection from red. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I'm running these 4 costly creatures. One of them is some disassembly required. The third Happy Holidays promos of the brew, this enchantment allows you to sacrifice a creature for just 1 black mana. When you do, you can distribute its keywords to any amount of other target creatures until end of turn. Not only can you do this to your own creatures, but to an opponent's creatures as well. This is also a great way to politic in a match by garnering favors. You can also do it to your own creatures if 1 blocker isn't enough. Granted, these keywords to many creatures can be more powerful than to keep it on a single creature. Evil Presence is yet another Happy Holidays promo that can take advantage of these creatures. With Evil Presence, you don't need to cast these creatures. You can simply put them from your hand onto an opponent's battlefield. Then, that creature attacks that player each turn if able. That's crazy if the creature has vigilance. They'd have to block their own creature each combat. However, since these creatures also have protection, you can give them to an opponent with the pertinent colors in order for them to not have any way to block them or get rid of them. Evil Presence indeed. However, if you don't need to or don't want to sacrifice them or give them away, you can still take advantage of them with Audric Lunarch Marshal. Thanks to Audric, all of your creatures gain the same keywords they have at the beginning of each combat. This definitely makes your board state way more menacing, especially to any would-be attackers. You simply tell them softly to behave as you remind them of the huge sticks you have on the battlefield. The deck also has ways to create tokens, which we're going to see later on. So Audric being able to give them all the keywords from your other creatures can be quite the attack deterrent. If even then, your opponents decide to be naughty, target them with Season's Beatings. This Happy Holidays promo is a bit uncomfortable to cast with its quadruple red, but it's a great way to potentially wipe an opponent's board of their creatures. If they have huge creatures or creatures with death touch, it's even better. Since all damage is dealt simultaneously upon resolution, any creatures that die will still deal their damage to the other creature. Goblin Sleigh Ride is another fun way to deal with threats. This Happy Holidays promo is in the spirit of cards that require some form of dexterity to function, like Falling Star and Chaos Orb, both of which are banned in Commander. But Goblin Sleigh Ride wasn't banned during the 6 weeks where it was legal to use silver bordered cards in Commander. If you plan its path well, you can put one of your fatties on top of it to deal some serious damage to your opponent's creature, or maybe creatures. Since these cards will undoubtedly be sleeved, that does help with smoothly gliding over the playmats. The deck's also running Yule Ooze. This Happy Holidays promo is a fair stacks piece since the target is chosen at random. Since it doesn't target though, it bypasses Protection, Hexproof, and Shroud. Keep in mind that means that you might lose something of yours too. At least it does get bigger when it does, and it has Regenerate, so it can be quite the menacing beater. Another beater in the deck grows with time, and that's Bog Humbugs, one more of the Happy Holidays promos. A 1/1 flyer for just 2 mana is good, but not that impacting in a run-of-the-mill Commander game. However, each time it deals combat damage, it has the potential of getting a +1/+1 counter. All you have to do is hum that many notes of a festive song. Thankfully, if you're like me, then you spare the table of your singing if your voice is like a caterwauling goblin. Luckily, if you don't know any festive songs, the flavor text helps you out since it's the first 11 notes of Jingle Bells. Alright, so what is it we're devising that we're protecting it by being friendly with our group hug cards and menacing with our beaters? Well, Princess Twilight Sparkle's activated ability, of course. If you saw my review for Ponies the Galloping in the episode of the flight in the link above, you'd know that you can actually use her ability to win the game outright, even on your own. However, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, since Rarity is the only one presently on a card, you have to jump through more than a couple of hoops to be able to activate her game-ending ability. To summarize, Maro confirmed that you can use Nameless Shapeshifter's ability to change its name to either Applejack, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, or Rainbow Dash, and that this would count for Princess Twilight Sparkle's ability. Since you need 4 of these, you can use a kicked Rite of Replication to make 5 more tokens of Nameless Shapeshifter. That way, you can have all of the ponies needed to activate her ability. Notice also that ability doesn't wear off at the end of the turn. That means that you don't have to invest so much mana in a single turn to win. Another way to achieve this is thanks to another Happy Holidays promo in the deck, and possibly the most important one, Mishra's Toy Workshop. In that set review video, I speculated that if you used My Little Pony toys for the tokens as specified by the workshop, that these should count for Princess Twilight Sparkle's ability. So I tweeted Eli Schifrin just to make sure. He retweeted it to Mark Rosewater, and lo and behold, my hypothesis was correct. As confirmed by the man himself, if you use the pertinent toys as tokens due to Mishra's Toy Workshop, these will count for Princess Twilight Sparkle. This is great since it provides 2 different ways to activate her ability, with Mishra's Toy Workshop and the aforementioned Nameless Shapeshifter Rite of Replication combo. Okay, so how does the Toy Workshop work? Well, if its mana is used to pay for a spell or ability that creates tokens, you use toys for those tokens. In order to not invest slots in the deck for token creation, I used lands for this purpose instead, since it's always easy to slot lands in a deck. Kirkkeep and Jeldarin Outpost each create a token for 2 mana. Sure, you also need colored mana, and the Outpost requires sacrificing a plains when it enters the battlefield, but if you have both of them in play, then you can activate both of them with the mana from the Toy Workshop in order to get 2 toys out of them. Springjack Pasture, Vitu-Ghazi the City Tree, and Westvale Abbey require a larger investment of mana, but they're still good on their own. They don't enter the battlefield tapped, so they can tap to give mana, and even without Mishra's Toy Workshop, you can sink mana into them to create chump blockers in a pinch or at the end of the turn before yours. Westvale Abbey can also transform into Ormondal Profane Prince, a 9/7 legendary demon with flying, lifelength, indestructible, and haste, which is an amazing creature to have in case all goes awry. Keep in mind that Audric shares all of these keywords amongst all your creatures, including all these tokens being created. Another card that can take advantage of Mishra's Toy Workshop is Grimlock Dinobot Leader, included in the deck in the spirit of the holidays and all these toys used in the deck. That being said, Grimlock is also included because if you use Transformers toys thanks to Mishra's Toy Workshop ability, those tokens represented by the Transformers toys benefit from Grimlock's +2/+0 Lord ability. This makes your chump blockers even more menacing. So if you still have to continue building your defenses before pulling off the win, you can go this route first. Notwithstanding, Grimlock's also a great beater since you can also transform him into his 8/8 Trampler form, Grimlock Ferocious King, for just 2 mana. Your Transformers toy tokens lose their buff, but now you have an even larger attacker for anyone who needs Retribution applied to them, even more so if you equip the aforementioned Loxodon Warhammer to it. Thopter Pi Network is yet another Happy Holidays promo, and this one creates more tokens for the deck. This promo is literally just Thopter Spy Network, with the only difference being that you have to be eating during your upkeep instead of controlling an artifact. You also don't get to draw a card, but you do get to eat the food when its token dies. Just make sure you don't use flan, pudding, jello, chocolate, or any such food choices for your tokens. Do mind the table and other players' cards. So maybe something like an M&M? Anyways, unfortunately these literal food tokens don't count as actual food tokens, but that's fine since there aren't any food shenanigans in the deck. Keep in mind that this ability is triggered during your upkeep, so it won't count for Mishra's Toy Workshop. That means that you can't pay its generic mana cost with it. You also won't be able to use toys for its tokens. Alright, so to summarize, Nameless Shapeshifter with Rite of Leprechaun can satisfy Princess Twilight Sparkle's ability, as well as using My Little Pony toys due to Mishra's Toy Workshop's clause when using its mana. The most we can do so far to give the win to everyone left in the game, which by the way on its own is hilarious. For example, if someone became the arch enemy, you can take them out of the game, then activate Princess Twilight Sparkle's ability so that everyone left wins the match. But that might be a bit cruel. There is a way to outright win though, if you remember from my set review video. If your opponents can't win, that means you're the only one to win with her ability. Thus the deck runs Platinum Angel and Angel's Grace. Angel's Grace is harder to deal with since it has split second, but you'd need that extra mana before activating Princess Twilight Sparkle's ability in order to cast it in response. What these effects do is that since your opponents can't win, when the ability says that everybody wins, they can't win, only you can win. Therefore the game isn't a draw, it's a victory solely for you. This is an auto win effect similar to cards like Happily Ever After, since it's an automatic win as well as being practically equally convoluted to pull off. Whatever the route to pulling it off, you're going to need at least 4 cards to do so. So it also means that it's very satisfying when you do pull it off, especially for the timmiest of timmies. That being said, I am running Pact of Negation, Swan Song, Negate, and Dobbin's Veto to deal with anything opponents might cast in response to us trying to pull off the win or casting anything during our turn to disrupt our combo. The reason I'm not running Force of Will or Force of Negation is because the deck is 5 colored and we might not have the blue card in our hand to exile to them. Either way, Force of Negation can't be cast for free during our own turn. Since this is a 4-card combo, the deck does need ways to dig through our library in order to find the pieces as well as any responses needed. This is why the deck is running Sphinx's Revelation, Stroke of Genius, and Blue Sun Zenith. These instants are amazing mana sinks that can be cast at the end step before our turn in order to draw a ton of cards. Sphinx's Revelation also has the added bonus of gaining us that much life as well. Thanks to Reliquary Tower, you don't have to worry about drawing into too many cards, or if you did have to discard a lot of cards or lost some of those combo pieces, you can recover them with Elixir of Immortality. These 2 cards are amazing for many toolboxes. They don't belong in every deck, but are amazing for those that do run them. You can also just straight up tutor for the cards you need for this combo. Assembling a 4-card combo without any assistance will be quite the uphill battle, so tutors are an excellent way to provide consistency. Mystical Tutor is mostly used to search for Angel's Grace or Rite of Replication, but you can also use it to tutor up for anything else you'd need like a response or even another tutor if you already have a combo piece in hand. Enlightened Tutor is mostly used to search for Platinum Angel, but you can also tutor for any mana rock in order to ramp or potentially slow Mercy if you need to get some defenses up, or maybe for Rites of Flourishing for the group hugs. Worldly Tutor is mostly used to tutor for Nameless Shapeshifter or Platinum Angel, but you can also use it to tutor for Rarity if needed for the combo. You can also use it to tutor for Audric or any of the huge beaters if your auto win plan went south. Vampiric Tutor is obviously the best tutor of the deck since it can tutor for any card regardless of type and you don't have to reveal it to opponents. Not to be outdone, this deck does run each 1 mana instant speed tutor, which is why all 5 colors are represented thanks to Goblin Tutor. It does have a 1 in 6 chance of not doing anything, but depending on the outcome of the die roll, you can look for any of the pieces you need. If you roll a 6, it's a Mystical Tutor. If you roll a 5, it's a Worldly Tutor. And if you roll a 3 or a 4, it's an Enlightened Tutor. Although rolling a 4 is preferable to rolling a 3 in this deck. Now, it might seem like rolling a 2 is useless in this deck since there are obviously any more Goblin Tutors in it. However, that's not really the case. If you roll a 2, you can tutor for Nameless Shapeshifter. You can use its ability anywhere and anytime. That means that you can pay 1 generic and change its name to Goblin Tutor in order to get it upon resolution of the actual Goblin Tutor. That means that Goblin Tutor has about a 67% chance of being useful for helping complete the game-winning combo. The deck is also running 2 more tutors, Gifts Given and Naughty Nice. These Happy Holiday promos aren't used to search through our own library though, but our opponent's library. This might not help assemble the combo, but it's great in potentially depriving opponents of their own combo pieces or getting access to the best cards in their deck. Similar to tutoring is wishing. Although wish effects don't really work in Commander thanks to Rule 13, there's nothing in the rules stating that Stalking Tiger won't enter the battlefield with a magic booster under it, since you're technically not wishing for a card you control outside of the game. This booster pack can also be anything at all. Commander Legends hasn't been released yet, but its boosters will contain 20 cards that are focused on Commander, so those would definitely be the best cards to place under Stalking Tiger. You can also put boosters whose contents you already know with certainty, like the Signature Spellbook series boosters. As of the recording of this video, only Jace's and Gideon's have been released, so if you want a particular card from there, that's also a great booster to use, especially Jace's since it has Mystical Tutor, Counter Magic, Brainstorm, and even Gifts Ungiven. Or you can use a theme booster from any of the sets that included them since they have 35 cards in them. The final Happy Holidays promo in the deck is Decorated Knight. This card takes wishing to a whole other level. Essentially, when you cast its present arms to send it on an adventure, you're wishing for an entire deck. Keep in mind that in Commander decks you can't use wish effects as originally intended. However, Sheldon Mannery has confirmed that if your playgroup is okay with it, Decorated Knight will work exactly as intended. Since this deck is intended to be played in a pod where players are using the previously allowable silver bordered cards, it's a great call. Now you're basically swapping out your current library for a new deck. It should be clear that the deck needs to be a Commander deck. This treads the game into some murky waters, so let's clear up some of that before continuing. You're exchanging your library for a new deck. That means that your Commander is still the same one and nothing else changes from any other zones. Your hand, battlefield, graveyard, command zone, exile, etc. all stay the same. Only your library is changing. So the Commander from the deck you're bringing in doesn't go to your command zone and it doesn't replace your Commander. It's simply another card in the library, meaning that you're putting all 100 cards as your new library. The unsanctioned product that will be released on February 29, 2020 is said to have some things for Commander players in mind. So maybe some silver bordered shenanigans will be clarified further. Hopefully Decorated Knight is one of them. Or maybe some special rules and legal list if you want to include silver bordered cards in your Commander games. That being said, if you do use present arms for another deck, go for a Reaper King Scarecrow Tribal for flavor and get some of those Nightmare Before Christmas vibes. The rest of the tutoring effects in the deck are actually for ramping. The main land we're tutoring for is obviously Mishra's Toy Workshop, but after finding that one, we also have to ramp for token creating lands in order to actually use its ability. But once we're set in that aspect, we can use the rest of the ramp spells for mana producing lands in order to fix color or get ahead in lands. Expedition Map and Sylvan Scrying are cheap to cast, can be used to find any land, but the card is put into our hand instead of on the battlefield. Fortunately, Hour of Promise and Crop Rotation do just that. They put them on the battlefield. Hour of Promise is the best of these since it can be used to ramp for both Mishra's Toy Workshop as well as a token creating land with a single spell. Elvish Reclaimer and Golos Tireless Pilgrim are creatures that can do the same effect. The elf is essentially a reusable crop rotation, while Golos only ramps when it enters the battlefield. That being said, Golos has a great ability in the deck since it provides some epic advantage by being able to cheat 3 things from the top of our library. It's a great mana sink as well as a way to cheat in some of the more expensive creatures previously mentioned. The deck runs Azusa Lost But Seeking, so if you exile too many lands, she allows us to play 2 more that turn. This is amazing mana acceleration. Either way, she's great on her own if we drew into a lot of lands thanks to the draw spells and draw effects. Now that I mentioned mana acceleration, the deck does run a ton of free mana rocks. Mox Diamond, Mox Opal, Chrome Mox, Mox Amber, Jack in the Mox, Mana Crypt, and Soul Ring. Soul Ring is the only one that isn't free, but for just 1 mana it's too good to pass up. Jack in the Mox is risky since it won't always give you the color you want, and you have a 1 in 6 chance of having to sacrifice it and take 5 damage, but it's still a free source of colored mana. Chrome Mox is a great rock in the deck since you can just imprint any of the Happy Holidays promos that might not be as impacting in the game at that time. Keep in mind that including them all on the deck was a self-imposed restriction, but Chrome Mox makes them even more useful by turning them into a mana rock. Besides mana acceleration, we can also reduce casting costs with Rarity. Rarity might be needed for winning with Princess Twilight Sparkle, but she's also great on her own. Being able to reduce about 56% of the deck's spells is nothing to scoff at. On top of that, she also has a Mother of Runes type effect. If you pay 1, tap her, and reveal a My Little Pony you own, you can give target creature protection from any of the colors in that toy's coat, mane, and outfit. As I mentioned in my set review video, if you use this particular version of Rainbow Dash, you can give protection from every color. While on the topic of mana, the deck is running all 10 fetch lands as well as all 10 dual lands and all 10 shock lands to round out the rest of the lands in the deck. 5 colored decks need a consistent mana base, especially when the game-winning ability needs one of each color to pull off. This brew is just how I would build around Princess Twilight Sparkle. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I brewed this deck with the challenge of including all Happy Holidays promos in this deck. Even with the self-imposed restriction, it's still super fun to play when playing in a silver bordered pod, following the same rules and ban lists as when silver bordered cards were legal for 6 weeks when Unstable was released. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the Brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link, that also helps out the channel. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of the Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am Demented Kirby, happy brewing and happy holidays.